Now, before we go into the actual course and start looking at UI Toolkit, I would just like to briefly show you this page here from the Unity documentation that is sort of telling you in a nutshell what UI Toolkit wants to be and how to kind of position it compared to the old, I'm always saying old UI systems, let's say other UI systems. However, if you read those first two lines here, UI Toolkit is intended to become the recommended UI systems for your new UI development project. So this already tells you why you might already use the terms old for the other systems, because they will obviously also exist and it will take a while until they are replaced entirely. But the UI Toolkit is sort of the future. So I think that a lot of the stuff that we are going to learn here will be useful even if you start to go deeper on UI Toolkit later in the future. You might say, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit like with electric cars. Although obviously you might argue on that, but sooner or later something like that will probably come and everyone will have to switch. And that's a little bit similar here. Now the old systems, and you have a nice comparison, for example, down here. The old systems are called UGUI and ImGUI for immediate GUI. And on this side, you can find a little bit of some information when to use what. And let's just very briefly mention that, like the very smallest summary that you could provide of this page is probably somewhere here, where you can see that now we are talking about, as we said, mostly about runtime game development. So we are talking about games that you can actually see when you press the play button. We are not talking about editor scripting specifically. And in that case, and in this scenario, there will just be some edge cases where UGUI is still the recommended solution. And that is particularly when you have things where your UI should actually appear directly in the game world, right? So now I'm not too much into like very sophisticated 3D games. Generally, I mostly work on 2D projects, and that's where I'm actually more interested in, or I'm having a technically having a 3D game and 3D characters, but they sort of have a camera that lets them appear like in a 2D thing. Like, I don't know, when you have something like a RTS game, you technically have 3D objects, but you're sort of often treating it like in the old days where you had a 3D thing, right? Because it's an easier way for the user to look at those things. But then there are obviously use cases where you have some genuine 3D sort of situations where you want to position your UI actually inside the 3D world. And for those cases, for now, they still recommend UGUI and then some other things with shaders and stuff like that. For basically the other things, and particularly for games that are generally UI heavy, that, I don't know, things like where you have city builders, again, RTS games where you're having a lot of menus to choose your units, your whatever from. Um, for those things, you can do already, I think, a lot of stuff and maybe almost everything you need with UI Toolkit. But even if you cannot do all of it now, the intent, I think, of Unity, and if you read that, that's what they're saying basically here, is that in the future, you will be able to do basically all what you need with UI Toolkit. So that's just a very brief overview. Have a look at this page if you want to go deeper on that. But the key takeaway here is, and that was also for me the question, like I had, I don't know, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, probably, some phase where I was still, I already saw some preview versions of UI Toolkit, and I was thinking, like, do I really have to learn this? Because it looks like there's a couple of new things that you have a learning curve, and you have to really yeah, learn all this terminology, get used to a new editor, stuff like that. But then when I started going deeper into this, yes, it looks like if you are serious with Unity, if you want to do serious games with Unity and games that require some UI or some more UI, you will probably not get over UI Toolkit in the future. And to be honest, by now, I actually think you shouldn't, because it's the better and the easier way. And you have a more convenient workflow, I think. So that's at least that's my my idea on this topic. Have a look at this page. You can also find a lot of blog posts on the topic, and make up your own opinion, and then you know if you want to take the course or not.